Light Electric Vehicle Association Technical Training Program. I'm also the chairman of the Light Electric Vehicle Association. But I want to make it very clear that if you want something to actually get done, you contact Martin. Martin's the executive director, and one of my goals is for him to do all of the work. I've been successful with that for the most part. All right. So the first thing we want to do is introduce ourselves. And one of the things that's in my mind is, are we dealing, what kind of folks we got? Have we got electrical engineers? Do we have bike mechanics? Do we have people that are starting or owning a business? So an introduction, and I'll use myself for an example. I've been in the bicycle business since I was a teenager. I got involved in electric bicycles in 1996. Started a consulting company that serves the electric bicycle industry. Did a lot of traveling, learned a lot about e-bikes. Sid Krupchak and I started the Light Electric Vehicle Association in 2008. And we have been running the technician training program in response to what our members asked for. I come from Kentucky, spent a couple of years getting rid of the accent, and I live in South Florida. So that's kind of an example of the sort of introduction we'd like to have. And why don't we start with the people at the top of the screen? Richard, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hey, good morning, guys. My name is Richard Nickel, and I work at Clean Republic, and we own Dakota Lithium and Hilltopper Electric Bike Company. And yeah, my background's in electronics test, repair, and low voltage alarm systems. And what I do here for the company is technical support for the batteries and the bicycles, light repair, things like that.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Your company's been around quite a while. It's got a good reputation. Glad to have you here.
Awesome.
Bill, your turn, Bill.
Oh, my name's Bill Howard. My background is I used to be a bicycle mechanic years ago in a local shop. I am retiring the end of this month. I've been a associate pastor at a church for 20 years. And so I'm retiring and seeking to get into, my wife and I just gotten into e-bikes. She had a hip replacement in December, and I disdained them for a long time. I'm a traditional bicyclist, but we bought e-bikes, love them, and got a lot of friends that have them. And I've always been one that I want to know how everything works and how I can fix it when it breaks. And I reside in the best place in the United States, which is North Idaho. We ride on it every day. We have it's called the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. You can Google it, look it up. It's an awesome 72-mile route. Follows rivers, passes by lakes, through areas. There's no railroad bed. Rails to Trails came in and redid it. But that's who I am, and I'm looking forward to expanding my knowledge base.
Welcome, Bill. David, I think it's your turn. David Pendleton.
Hi, I'm Dave Pendleton. I got into biking about a year ago, and kind of like Bill, am wanting to learn more about how to take care of everything for my own benefit. And I'm in Silicon Valley.
Welcome, David. Phil, is that right? P Electric is Phil. You want to introduce yourself, please? Phil may have stepped away from his computer. Gregory, you're up. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Greg Smith. I reside in Phoenix, Arizona. About a year ago, we started a e-bike rental business. We currently have 20 e-bikes we rent, and then I've gotten into the sales side of it with approximately about 25 bikes right now in inventory, getting ready for the weather to cool down here a little bit in Phoenix. And the service side of the business is a third phase. I do have a low voltage background. I was a low voltage contractor for many years. We currently have a couple of small businesses, and I wanted to get some certified training so that I could offer some service and repair as well.
Well, welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Chris, you're up.
Hi, I'm
Okay.
Chris.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry, wrong Chris.
go ahead, Chris.
No, you can go ahead.
Chris Hamilton, you're the next one in the row, so you're
Oh,
up.
sure. I guess I'll go then. It was me. All right. So yeah, I'm Chris, and I am in Seattle, Washington, along with at Clean Republic, Dakota Lithium, Hilltopper, along with Rick, or Richard, whatever he wants to be called these days. Yeah, so I am the assistant manager of our tech support team, and yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else that I should mention?
No, welcome.
That's me.
All right. So welcome, Chris Hamilton. Now the next person is showing us on my computer is David Cleveland, which is a very familiar name. Is it David behind that computer screen, or is it somebody that works for David? Or is there anyone behind that computer screen? All right. We'll,
Oh, David Cleveland said in the chat that they're there with one of their techs, Jordan, and they don't have a microphone set up on their computer.
I should keep the chat box open, shouldn't I? Well, David Cleveland is familiar both to me personally and to Leva. Welcome, David, and anybody that you've got with you. Michael, I think that means it's your turn.
All right, cool. My name's Michael. I'm also with Clean Republic with Chris and Richard. I've been working with Hilltopper Bikes and Dakota Lithium for about 2 years now. Yeah, definitely love e-bikes. They have found a place in my heart. And I'm excited to dive deep into them. Also in Seattle, but originally from Colorado. So definitely love having an e-bike here in Seattle to help out with all the hills.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Chris, you're up. Chris Briggs is up.
Ed, I don't know if you remember me from my time with Pete Cooper and Skillian, but I'm moving on to my own e-bike repair and conversion business. I'm on the board at a local nonprofit where we repair bikes for everybody. I'm in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I've converted 3 bikes. I'm obsessed with transit and efficiency, and e-bikes just like boom, just go right there. And so I'm just I feel like I'm amongst fellow nerds here. So hi.
We're nerds. All right. Now, by the way, I like your hairstyle. I once suggested to my wife I would do something similar, and she started looking for locksmith telephone numbers.
Well, I'm in a old school punk band, and we just played a major festival, so I had a whole rainbow mohawk.
Yeah, but I'm going to take a screenshot of you and just tell my wife I'm going to show this to the hair cutter. All right, Will, you're up.
Hello, good morning. I'm William Santos. I'm based out of San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in the East Bay. Many years ago, 30 years ago, I used to road race and very much involved in the Northern California, Nevada cycling. And but you know, we all get older, and I end up eventually getting an e-bike many years later. Love it. And so now I'm very much interested in, and my day job is cybersecurity, data privacy, and risk. I work in private banking. And so this is a complete twist, a complete change from what I do in my day job. So really looking forward to picking up learning in this class and be able to avoid injuring myself or others or burning down the house, and really be able to maybe even generate revenue. So thank you.
Those all sound like worthwhile objectives. I'll pass on to you a quote from Gary Fisher. at a trade show one time, he explained that electric bikes add 15 years to your cycling season. Austin, you're up.
All right. So I actually work at a golf cart shop, but we got into e-bikes like about a year ago. And this is before I started, and it was when I got interviewed, it was actually my first time riding an e-bike and absolutely loved it. And then I had to learn how to work on them. And I know all the basics, but this class will teach me a lot more in-depth things than what I currently know. Oh, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome,
Okay.
Austin. I manage. Every now and then I'll be a little bit clumsy with my screen controls. I apologize.
That's yeah, it cut out for just a second. I was like, oh.
Yeah, Martin, your turn. I see that David Cleveland, welcome. We've got noise and picture from you. If you'll turn your microphone on, you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Cleveland. I'm the developer, founder of eCells Incorporated, as the first manufacturer in the world to offer twin motor, twin battery, full suspension designed e-bikes. We're all about all-wheel drive. It makes far more sense than single wheel, and you can go to my website and discover why all-wheel drive works better. But how are you doing, Ed?
Things are going well for me, and I see from social media and your cheerful demeanor that things are going well for you.
Yes, it is. It's
Yeah.
going real well.
You're recently remarried?
No, I'll get married September 9th.
Oh, well, congratulations. I think we should all give the man a round of applause. He's got the courage to get married once again. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start our program.
All righty.
While we are, if you're talking, you have to turn your microphone on for us to hear you. And if you're not talking, please turn your microphone off so we don't get any feedback.
All righty.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up the presentation. I've already introduced myself, and we've discussed with this group. It seems like we've got mostly bike mechanics, mostly people that are involved in the electric bike business, with a couple of folks that have more of an engineering background. I tend to approach this course as though from a bicycle mechanic's perspective. I spent most of my life working as a bike mechanic, and that's my take on this. Dr. Gerhardt is a PhD engineer who teaches usually only one class a year, face-to-face class in Danville, Virginia. And if at the end of this, you're an electrical engineer wishing you'd been absolutely buried with electrical engineering jargon, you could take Dr. Gerhardt's class I guess it's in October, isn't it? Maybe September. But so we're going to approach this as though we're bike mechanics. The Light Electric Vehicle Association right now is around 400 members. Most of them are companies involved in the electric bicycle business, either as distributors, manufacturers, or companies that produce components that are used in the electric bicycle business. Our membership is very international. They come from 29 different countries, and we've been around. We got started in 2008. And here we are, bigger and stronger than ever. Now, every time I start one of these courses, I like to pay my respects to Dr. Gerhardt. Dr. Gerhardt is still very involved, but he is the guy that wrote the original technician training program syllabus. He updates the syllabus, and he keeps updating, as Martin said, every week, I think, keeps updating the electric bicycle maintenance manual. Dr. Gerhardt and I had a brief conversation yesterday, and he told me that he's only 79 and he intends to work until he's 90. He is a ball of energy, and he is an encyclopedia on almost everything technical concerning electric bikes. So we're going to talk, you will often hear us referring to him. He's very much appreciated. Sid Korupchak was the president of the LEVA when this course was launched, and she created you're likely to realize right now. So ask questions. I don't mind people interrupting me for questions. It helps me make the course more focused. Another thing that every now and then somebody complains, they say, Ed, all you do is read your PowerPoint. If you think all I did was read my PowerPoint, you were not paying attention. Yeah, I do occasionally read straight from the PowerPoint, but I'm also providing almost always information that's not on the PowerPoint. So stay alert. By the way, Martin will email you a complete copy of this presentation if you wish to have one. It's a huge file, but you're welcome to have your own copy. While we're on the subject of this PowerPoint, it was originally created for a 16-hour in-person class. And then we started doing these online classes during the COVID times. And the online classes have been very, very popular. It seems that it's much easier for people to take this course online than it is for them to fly to Fort Myers or Danville or wherever we're able to hold the course. And so we're using a PowerPoint that was originally written for a 16-hour class, and we're using it for an 8-hour class. There are occasions when I will be skipping some slides. You may believe that I'm not skipping important stuff. A lot of times the slides that I'm going past are slides that either I'm sure the class has understood this already, or they're concerning detail, like how to use a soldering iron. If I think this group knows how to use a soldering iron, we're not going to look at picture after picture of how to use a soldering iron. So, but if you see a slide that you wish I had stopped on, interrupt me, ask questions. And that kind of covers talking a little bit about online versus in person. One of the questions we often get is, when are we going to start in-person classes again? Dr. Gerhardt is doing an in-person class in Danville, Virginia at the vocational school there once a year. But the main answer is this. Dr. Gerhardt is 79. I am shockingly close to 70. We don't want to expose ourselves to COVID any more than we have to. And so we will resume in-person classes in the style that we did before 2019. We'll resume those classes when we feel safe. In the meantime, this program is working pretty well. We've already introduced ourselves and got a pretty idea who's who. But let me discuss the roles of electric bicycle technicians. A professional light electric vehicle technician is somebody that's in this business, in this activity to make money. They work for themselves or they work for somebody else, and their priorities are a little bit different from a hobbyist. So I'm going to talk about both. A professional has got to make safety of the consumer and safety of themselves their first priority. Now, they've also got to make money, which means that time is important. They've got to be efficient in their diagnosis. They've got to be efficient in the repair. They've got to, frankly, got to have the parts available, because telling a customer that you get these parts a week from now or 2 weeks from now or 3 months from now does not make for happy customers and makes it very difficult to make money. So efficiency and efficient use of time. Many times something that can be repaired requires too much time. And we'll talk about that in a couple of, we'll focus on that a couple of times during this course. For example, disassembling a battery package and finding the one cell that's defective, it might take you 40 or 50 hours of work to do that. And that's simply too much time invested into a battery package that can simply be replaced. So many times the answer for a professional is just replace it. Profitability, got to make money. But the professional has got to give priority to safety and the best interest of the customer ahead of profitability. Once you've established that you're producing a safe result and that you and your customer are going to be safe, then it's time to think about how to make money. Now, hobbyists have an important role in our industry, and we got a lot of them. And hobbyists, the safety issue again is number one. Electric bikes have several different ways to hurt people, starting with kinetic energy, which is a fancy way of saying falling off the bike while you're using it. Safety of yourself and safety of the users that may come in contact with something you've worked on has got to be your first priority. But you don't need to be profitable. And because you don't need to be profitable as a hobbyist, you can use as much money, as much time as you want to explore something simply because it's interesting. Now, because hobbyists have this freedom to explore things without worrying too much about profitability, they often learn things that the professional doesn't know. And professionals, wise professionals, realize that hobbyists can often teach them some useful stuff. For example, there's a hobbyist-oriented Facebook group called Endless Sphere. Well, Endless Sphere is used to start it off as a bunch of electrical engineers that were interested in e-bikes and hobbyists, and then as it later attracted people who were hobbyists for electric bikes in general. And if you have been monitoring them for a while, you're going, they do a lot of interesting stuff that we would never try to make money on. It just isn't going to make money, but we can learn a lot from them. So hobbyists, important and valuable to us. There is a certificate. And this is one of the things that's very important for this class to understand. When you get done listening to me, no matter, even though that's grueling and it's going to take 2 days of, oh yes, I wish he'd shut up. When you get done listening to me, you're not done. There are several other things that have to happen before we can send you a certificate. One of them is you need to pass a written test. It's not a difficult test, and it's an open book test. Martin will send you the test on our last day. And we ask you to mark the test and send it back to Martin. Now, the next thing you need to do is you either have received or you will receive connector exercise kits. And these exercise kits are places for you to learn and demonstrate that you understand the skills that you would need to replace components on an electric bike. Replacing those components, you need to be able to use an Anderson, you know how to install an Anderson connector. You know how to install a Molex connector. You need to be able to solder successfully. You need to understand how to use shrink tubing to insulate the repair that you've just done. So we send out these kits, and with the kits are some instructions, and the instructions are very good. There's far more than 1,000 people have successfully followed those instructions. So open the instructions, read the instructions, do the work in the kit, take a photograph of it, send the photograph to Martin. Martin will look at the photograph, and if you've done the job right, and almost everybody does, if you've done the job right, you have passed the practical side of the test, you've passed the paper side of the test, and Martin will send you one of these, which you can then hang proudly in a place of honor in your shop or your home. I'm not going to read the list of what we will cover because it'll use up time we could use in actually covering stuff. But I am going to talk about the Electric Bicycle Maintenance Manual by Dr. Gearhart. This is another resource that you need to look into a little bit. The Electric Bike Maintenance Manual is a 200 and something page book on how to diagnose and repair electric bicycles, but it's accompanied by a lot of information on a USB stick. And then in that USB stick, you've got owner's manuals, repair manuals, specification sheets, videos that Dr. Gearhart has created about how to do a particular thing. A tremendous amount of information in there. And I regard that USB stick full of files as being a little bit like the library at my university. The first few days that I went to university, they walked us into the library and they said, here's this huge library, and you don't need to read every book in it. You simply need to know how to find every book in it.
Hace
So
pulpo,
that you can
¿todo
find
bien?
the subject that you
No,
need
ayer
to,
anoche la mamá de mi mejor
need
amigo
to answer.
y
And so for you, the task is this. Don't do it while I'm talking, but take time to put the USB stick in your computer and check it out and see what's in there. Get a sense of what sort of questions or what sort of resources can be addressed from the information that's inside your USB stick. Now, as Martin mentioned a moment ago, if you add something to it, it could be anything from a specification sheet that somebody sent you to a tip. You had an idea about how to fix something and it worked out pretty good. Send that information to Dr. Gearhart, or send it to Martin and he'll send it to Dr. Gearhart. Dr. Gearhart's custom is that he will incorporate that into the book or into that set of files, and then he will send you a free copy of the updated maintenance manual and its accompanying files, which is a pretty good deal. You get a copy of it as part of your package in buying this training event, but the updates he would charge you for. So we don't buy updates from Dr. Gearhart. Find something he can add to the book so that he'll send you the book for free. All right. Now that leads us into tools. When we do this in person, we provide all the tools. But an important question for everybody is always what tools are needed to be an e-bike technician. And the answer is you need bicycle tools in the sense that you need the mechanics tools that you would use to work on a bicycle. Most of us have those or have access to them already. Beyond that, you need a fairly simple list of stuff. A soldering iron, a good soldering iron, by the way, a general purpose crimping tool, wire strippers, and an Anderson crimping tool, plus a multimeter and possibly a mini clamp meter for measuring amperage. It's not a big list. It's not a long list. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to choose the tools that you might use. And I would start off by saying that the most important part of your tools are going to be your multimeter, also called a voltometer, your connector crimpers, which including an Anderson crimper, and bicycle tools. Now, one of the things that Dr. Gearhart does is he sells packages of tools, and these packages of tools will cost you, if you buy them from him, they'll cost you about the same as if you bought them individually on your own, except that he's basically done all the shopping for you. And I think the tools that he includes in here come from about 17 different sources. So he compiles these kits. The price that he charges, the last time I looked at it carefully, he's charging about the same amount that you would pay if you bought every piece of it individually. So, but I'm not involved in that sale. Martin's not involved in that sale. You'd be doing business directly with Dr. Gearhart. Now, there is one piece of equipment that he sells that we really want to bring your attention to, and that is the computerized battery analyzer, which is the photograph on the right side of this slide. And we're going to talk quite a bit about the computerized battery analyzer, why it's useful. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But one of the things I'll point out at this point is Dr. Gearhart, when you buy it from him, it comes set up with the software loaded and the passwords and other information written on a sticker and stuck on the back of it. He's tested everything. It's a very high level of service for the same price as if you bought it straight from West Mountain Radio. All right, so let's talk about your most important tool. The tool that you're going to be using constantly, the tool that should live in your back pocket when you're working on bikes or in your hand, is a multimeter. Now, multimeters, there's quite a variety of multimeters out in the world. And when I wouldn't be surprised to find out that every single person watching this has got their own multimeter already. But we thought, what's the best multimeter? All right, there's just a couple of things to consider. One of them is accuracy, reliability, and durability. The company Fluke is they are the big dog in electronics and electrical measurement equipment. I think of them as being kind of like Snap-on tools for electricians. Snap-on tools are the best mechanics tools. Fluke, it has the best electrical or electronic tools. And the Fluke 101 is a auto ranging multimeter. It is simple. It's difficult to make mistakes with. I've used one. I used to have two. Somebody stole one. It might have been Martin that stole it. In any case, somebody stole my Fluke. They don't break, and they don't wear out. So the Fluke 101, simple, reliable, durable, and it has all the features we need, and it does not have features we don't need. And it's not expensive. I think when I bought mine with my first one a long time ago, they were close to $100, but I think they're less than that now. I think they might be close to $50 now. So I see it as a screaming bargain and an extremely effective or extremely appropriate tool. Now, a moment ago, I said the multimeter, a simple multimeter, is good. What we see in this photograph here is these are sort of ordinary offerings. You can probably find one of these at Harbor Freight or Ace Tools or the local hardware store, but they got a whole bunch of settings. And I don't like these because it is way too easy to accidentally put the pointer on the wrong setting. That's probably not a disaster, but it is going to slow you down. And sometimes it's going to cause you to make mistakes. So these complex multimeters, often, which by the way are also often cheap multimeters, we recommend against them. Now, one of the multimeter subject, how to use a multimeter, there's a really good video on that, and I'm going to play it for you. I think this is about a 4 or 5 minute video. And so I'm going to play this multimeter tutorial for you, and then we'll come back to this and talk a little bit about clamp meters. So come on, let's get the video up. There's a all right, Martin, give me a hand here. The video was supposed to just pop into existence here, and it's not doing it. Yeah, well, go ahead. I'll stop sharing. You take it over and show this video. While Martin's digging up the videos, anybody got any questions?
In this video, I'm going to cover multimeters and how to use them to measure voltage, current, resistance, and continuity. In this video, I'm going to cover multimeters and how to use them to measure voltage, current, resistance, and continuity. First up, where do you buy a multimeter? Well, multimeters are everywhere. You can get them at Radio Shack, Sears, dollar stores, Walmart, Amazon, eBay, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so how do you choose which one to get? First up, at the bare minimum, make sure the meter you're looking at can measure voltage, current, resistance, and continuity. If you can find one that measures capacitance and temperature as well, go for it. Unless you're working with some super special application, don't worry too much about accuracy. Plus or minus 2% is usually good enough, and even cheap multimeters these days will be that accurate or better. Next, the multimeter should have a digital display, not that old school analog crap, and it should have auto-ranging functionality for as many things as possible. Trust me, you don't want to waste your time screwing around with manual ranging. If you're too lazy to shop around, just get this one. $50, it'll do everything you need, and you won't outgrow it anytime soon. Okay, so now you have a multimeter. How do you use it? Let's start with measuring DC voltages. First, check the cables. Make sure the black lead is in the jack labeled COM or common. And once it's in there, you'll never need to take it out because the black lead always goes to common. The red probe, on the other hand, is something you'll have to pay very close attention to. If you plug it into the wrong jack, you will blow a fuse in your multimeter. We want to measure voltage right now, so I'm plugging in the red lead into the jack labeled volts, not amps. Next, set the dial to measure DC voltage. Touch the red probe to the positive terminal of your device and the black probe to the negative terminal of your device, and you should get a voltage reading. If you get the wires backwards, that's okay, you'll just get a negative reading on your multimeter. And that's actually a good way to figure out polarity. Now you can measure voltages in pretty much any DC circuit, as long as you're careful to not short anything out with the metal probes. Okay, let's move on to measuring AC voltages. Set the dial to the AC voltage setting, and again make sure the red lead is in the jack labeled voltage. Touch the probes to the AC voltage source that you want to measure, and you'll get your reading. As long as you don't touch the metal parts of the probe or short them out, this is perfectly safe. And as you would expect, there's no AC voltage coming out of this DC battery. Measuring resistance is easy too. Make sure the red lead is in the jack labeled ohms for resistance, and set the dial to the resistance setting. Here is me measuring the resistance of the skin on my hand. Here's me measuring the resistance of a resistor. And here I am measuring the resistance of a speaker. Now you might be wondering if you can measure the resistance of something in a circuit. Well, unfortunately it most likely won't work. You're going to have to remove the resistor from the circuit before measuring it. Next, let's talk about continuity. Measuring continuity basically just means checking whether or not there's a good connection between any 2 points in a circuit. To measure continuity, make sure your red probe is in the jack labeled continuity, or in my case resistance, and set the dial to the continuity setting. Test that the continuity function is working correctly by touching the probes together. Whenever there's almost zero resistance between 2 points, the multimeter will beep. You can use the continuity function to check if cables are internally broken or not. In the context of circuit boards, if there's a good copper trace between any 2 points, the multimeter will beep. If the circuit board is messed up, no beeps for you. Finally, let's use our multimeter to measure current. Set the dial to the amp setting. For almost all multimeters, there's going to be a separate jack just for measuring current. My multimeter has two, one for currents up to 10 amps and one for currents up to 400 milliamps. I usually start out with the amps jack, but if I need more accuracy, I can switch to the milliamps jack later. Now, measuring current is a little trickier than the rest of things. I can't just touch the probes and get an amp reading. In order to see how much current is flowing through a wire, I have to cut the wire and splice in the multimeter in series with the flow before I can get a measurement. Here I have a simple circuit with a battery pack, a motor, and some wires. In order to measure the current drawn by the motor, I cut the wire, splice in the multimeter, and now I can see that the motor is drawing 60-ish milliamps. If I want more accuracy, I can switch to the milliamp settings, and now I can see that the motor is drawing somewhere between 57 and 63 milliamps. Alright, thanks for watching, and have fun with your new multimeter.
All right, if you'll give it back to me, Martin. Any questions about multimeters? All right.
It was actually pretty informative.
Oh, yeah, he did a good job on that. Now, one of the limitations of the multimeter is that it can't measure a lot of amperage. You noticed he talked about cutting a wire and running it through the multimeter, and then most of the time that's got to be a pretty low amperage circuit. So in the electric bike world, we use some pretty substantial amperage. We need something that can measure anywhere between 10 and 65 amps at least. And the tool that we would reach for is a clamp meter. A tip about using clamp meters. First of all, you can get one from Fluke, and I recommend that. I don't have a photograph of a Fluke one because an engineer that used to work for me swiped mine. You notice I seem to have a consistent problem with this. You have Fluke stuff, people swipe it. It's kind of like Snap-on tools. You got a nice Snap-on ratchet, somebody swipes that. So the Fluke tools are attractive and they work very well, and they make a clamp meter that looks very much like this one. The fluke, any clamp meter though, important thing to know about using a clamp meter, you put it around one wire, not around two wires. If you put the clamp meter around two wires, you will get an error. If you put it around one wire, you'll get a measurement of how much amperage is flowing through that wire. All right. Now, some other tool related things, and then we'll start talking about diagnosis. Software and dongles. One of the things that is counterintuitive for people that are bike mechanics by background is that in the electric bike world, we do deal with mechanical bicycle stuff. We also deal with electrical and electronic stuff, but the thing that we're going to be doing more than any other single task in the future is going to be updating software. Updating software, or in some occasions, adjusting software parameters to get the performance that we or our customer wants, are going to be more common task than tightening up a bolt or truing a wheel. So when it comes to adjusting software, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, but it used to be that we had to have a bag full of dongles, various connecting wire sets that would allow us to connect our computer to our electric bike. And every company seemed to think they should make something that was incompatible with and different from what everybody else did. And so I've got a shoebox size full of various dongles that I don't need anymore, because most of the time now our software access is either through USB micro or USB mini, or it's through Bluetooth. But the takeaway comment from this slide would be this: you're going to be updating software, you're going to be adjusting parameters in software, you're going to be trying to find the guys or the company that can give you access to the software in a particular bike. That's going to become a big part of your future activities. And we will cover more about that tomorrow. Now, another thing that I'd like to bring your attention to is part of your package of information. There's I think it's 15 or 20 page document in there. It's called a Guide to LEV Terminology. And one of the things that I found, being a bicycle mechanic from Kentucky, and yes, Kentucky is a place that has educational challenges. I'm an example. There are people they send to Congress are another example. I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough physics. I didn't know enough electrical stuff. And so what I found was that this document was enormously helpful. There were words that I didn't know the meaning of, and there were concepts that I didn't know the meaning of, and that most of them are in this document, and you can look them up very quickly and very efficiently. So I encourage you to find that document, maybe even print it out so that you've got a paper copy of it available to you. Will it help you with this class? Maybe a little bit, although I try hard not to use too much in the way of jargon. If you have a question about a phrase or a term that I've used, just interrupt me and ask me. Now, computers for e-bikes, e-bike technicians. Most of the systems, most of the people that wrote the software that's in our battery management system or our motor controller system or our vehicle control system, that was written, it was not written. Go ahead. Was that a question? Okay. I don't actually have their faces in front of me, so I wasn't aware of that. So I'm delegating you to laugh at the appropriate moments. All right. Most of our software was written on a PC, not on a Mac. Now, personally, I like Macs, and most of the computers I own are Macs. But if you're going to be working on electric bikes, you need to have at least one PC-based computer. And it's also, if you're working on a particular brand of bikes, one of the things you might want to be alert to, a lot of this software was written 5, 6, 10 years ago. So sometimes if you go to the store and you buy the latest PC laptop and you think, hey, I'm equipped, you might be buying a PC that has an operating system that's not compatible with the operating system that was used when they wrote the software. This is not a big problem. The laptop that I use, I purchased in 2012, and it's still fine I haven't had any problems. I just want to give you a heads up. pay attention to what operating system is on your PC. Be sure that the operating system that's on your PC is going to be compatible with the software that you're going to be working with on the battery management system or the motor controller or whatever you're working on. One thing to know is that it is a good idea to have a laptop to know how to turn off the internet, really turn it off. Because some of the things that we do in updating software, we do not want a message arriving, an email arriving, or some notice from there's a new upgrade available for your, we don't want those arriving in the middle of what we're doing. That will usually mean that we have to start over. All right, that brings us to, we're going to talk about safety after I talk about diagnostics. So in a moment, I will get to the right slide to talk about diagnostics, but while I am scrolling through these, I'm going to invite questions. Anybody got any questions about anything we've tackled so far?
Pretty good so far. It's exciting to see the diagnosis stuff.
I'll be getting to it in a moment. One of the things about e-bike diagnostics is that fundamentally, it is an extremely simple process with things that can confuse and dismay you. Let's talk about the fundamentals, and I'll have a slide up to support that in just a second. The fundamentals are this. I call it follow the juice. Somebody's got an e-bike that's not working, or some function on the e-bike is not working. But let's talk about starting from scratch. What is scratch? Well, the very beginning was there electricity in the mains outlet that was used to charge the battery on this e-bike? That sounds like a silly question. Most mains outlets, when I say mains outlet, I mean the outlet that's in the wall of your workshop or your office. The most mains outlets are, of course, have electricity present all the time. But in my office, I have a wall switch that if I flip that wall switch, it turns the lights off, but it also turns off all the outlets in that wall. So if I had plugged my charger into that wall and then turned the lights off as I left the room, nothing would get charged. And some people are not alert to that sort of thing. So the first question is, was there electricity in the mains outlet that was providing energy for you to charge your battery? The next question would be, did that current, that electricity, did it arrive, did it reach the charger? If it reached the charger, the next question is the charger functioning? Now, some chargers have got a little light on them. Some chargers have got some other way to tell you if they're working or not. Perhaps there is a fan that's running. I'm going to go to the follow the juice graphic, and we'll come back to the others. But the question would be, is the charger working? And by the way, how do we know if there's a current in the wall? Well, we get out our multimeter and check. How do we know if that current is reaching the charger? Well, maybe the light lit up on the charger. That's a good sign. But if it doesn't have a light, then we would take our multimeter and check and see if there's current arriving at the charger. We would see if there's current leaving the charger. We'd see if that current is arriving at the battery. We'd see if the battery voltage is increasing. In a lithium battery, we'll talk about how this works, but lithium batteries, the voltage might not change much, but if you're charging the lithium battery, the voltage will change. So if the voltage is increasing, that means the charging is occurring, and that's good news. Is that current leaving the battery? If it's leaving the battery, is it reaching the motor controller? If it's reaching the motor controller, is the motor controller outputting a pulse width modulated current or a sinusoidal modulated current to the motor itself? If that's occurring, is that arriving at the motor? If that current is arriving at the motor, is the motor turning? If the motor is turning, our problem is probably not a big one. But there's a number of things that we would investigate along the way. For example, was there a kill switch on the brake lever that was activated? I had a student one time who was very frustrated by the fact that nothing he did would cause the bike to go. And so I'm talking to him about that, and it occurred to me to ask him, are you holding the brake lever while you're doing this? And he's like, oh yeah, I don't want it to roll away. Okay, let go of the brake lever. When he let go of the brake lever, the kill switch was no longer telling the motor controller to go nowhere, and all of a sudden his bike was working fine. So you look for these things. Is there a switch on the battery that turns the battery on and off? Is there a switch on the bike that turns the bike on and off? Is there a kill switch in the brake lever? Is there some protocol? For example, there are some bikes that you've got to push the bike so that the wheel turns a couple times before you can turn the motor on. There are some bikes where you've got to pedal 1 or 2 strokes before you can turn the motor on. There's some bikes where you've got to push various buttons in a various sequence before you can turn the motor on. So investigate those. Be sure you know what you're dealing with. But once you've got these side issues identified, it comes back to very simple flow chart. Did we find the place where the juice stops? Find the place where the electrical current is no longer reaching, and replace the component that's upstream. And then check it again. This very simple process will solve almost all electric bike problems. Now, sometimes people are simply not satisfied with something that's that simple. So let's talk about how to make it harder. First of all, diagnostics. Most electric bike problems are bicycle problems. Flat tires, brake cable that needs to be adjusted, spokes that need to be tightened, or the wheel needs to be trued. These are the most common problems. So the bicycle part is usually the part that we have to pay the most attention to as technicians. And frankly, I think working on the bicycle stuff, truing a wheel, adjusting a brake, getting that brake to stop squealing, these are more difficult than most of the electrical or electronic issues. But if you want to get into diagnostics of the electronic stuff, first look at your mechanical stuff. Low tire pressure. Do you have a brake rubbing? Is there a tire hitting a fender or a frame? Check that stuff first. Did you oil the chain? You know, I think all of us bike mechanics know that if we wipe the dirt off of a bike and oil the chain, the bike is going to work so much better that our customer is going to think we did something significant to it. So let's do that. Let's wipe the dirt off the bike. Let's oil the chain, and in the process, we may discover other issues. But there are flow charts that will help you in the book. I just talked about follow the juice. It's a very simple process. We explain it in detail. We provide you with a flow chart, but then we also provide flow charts for the people who want it to be more complicated. A non-running bike matrix 36-volt system. Here's a matrix where you simply follow this, looking at each box and making a decision about which one is your particular situation, and they'll tell you which box to go to next. There are charts like this in your book for a wide variety of possible problems. And what do you need to do? You need to be familiar enough with your book to know to look and find the flow chart that addresses your particular issue and follow it. There are also some troubleshooting guides on places like ebikes.ca, which is a super powerful resource, and oftentimes videos that can help you. We're going to be talking about the specific symptoms of particular components failing or underperforming as we go along. But one of the things that is one of the most frustrating things to deal with on an electric bike is a connector and wiring problem. The problems typically fall into one of these general groups. It's a loose connector. It just does not fit together well, and maybe you get an intermittent power as a result, or no power. Water in the connectors, which will not only can short them out, but it can also cause them to corrode together. So water in the connectors can be troublesome. Water in the connectors often leads to corrosion in the connectors, which is troublesome. Connectors can weld themselves together, or they can burn away and stop connecting. Abrasion to wire insulation. One of the classic problems with electric bikes is somebody laid the bike down on the side of the bike that has the wires coming out of the motor. Those wires got bent or pinched. They took the bike for some distance in their pickup truck, and as the bike was moving around a little bit in the back of the pickup truck, it was damaging the wiring harness. Can be a very frustrating problem to identify and to fix. Wire failure in insulation due to flexing. If you bend a wire back and forth enough, after a while it will break, it will crack, it will stop working properly. So that is, I've often had people say to me, gee, that's kind of frustrating that The diagnostics, the basic diagnostics are so simple. Well, folks, I'm not sure how many people have taken this course, more than 1,000. And I hear from a lot of them about their experiences afterwards. And the experience I usually hear goes like this. They say, I was able to figure out what the problem was, and the follow the juice was often the way that they figured out what the problem was. And I'm sorry about the confusion with the slides here. I'll get to the right slide in just a moment. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to think, when you've got to solve a problem on an electric bike, I want you to think about what you're doing. I'm going to introduce you to enough information that you're going to be able to figure out almost all problems. And it's not me saying that. It's the many, many people that have taken this course and gotten back in touch with me and said, I had 30 electric bikes in the back room that didn't work. Didn't know what to do with them. Took your course. I had to think about it. I had to look some stuff up. I had to ask a few questions, but now I've managed to repair those 30 bikes and they're back in service, or I've sold them. So this is the experience that I expect you all to have. Now, that leads us to safety. But before I start talking about safety, I'm going to ask if there's any questions about diagnostics. Nobody's saying anything. All right. Okay, safety. Earlier I said that your number one priority is to keep yourself and to keep your customer safe. Electric bikes have a number of hazards. One of the hazards is electric bikes can create fires. We're going to talk about how to avoid that. Electric bikes go down the roadway, and as they're going down the roadway, kinetic energy is involved. And if you fall off your bicycle, you're probably going to get hurt. It was at least one of our group that introduced themselves as a former bicycle road racer. I did that for a while, and let me tell you what, bicycle road racers usually have extensive experience with falling off their bike and getting hurt. Kinetic energy hurts. So how does that involve an electric bike? Well, an electric bike typically has a little bit higher average speed than a normal bike for most people. The electric bike is a little bit heavier, which means it has more kinetic energy. The electric bike user probably doesn't have as much practice at falling off their bike as I do or most other bike racers do. So we want to make sure that the brakes are working properly. We want to make sure that our customer is educated about how to use their bike and how to stay in control of their bike. And while I'm on the subject of kinetic injury mistakes, not too long ago, I had received a cargo bike that was it was a gift basically. So I put the cargo bike together and took it for a ride. I've been a bicycle mechanic forever. I certainly know how to put a bike together, don't I? So I decided that I would take my cargo bike down a little drop, about a 6-inch drop off of a curb, and bang, nice hard hit. The handlebars turned 90 degrees to where they should be. And I had 8 lanes of traffic, 4 lanes each way, watching me try to stay in control of a cargo bike as I careened through the middle of an intersection. I did manage to not fall down, and the motorists around me did manage to stop laughing long enough to resume their journeys. But the message for me was this: I had made a very simple error. I had not tightened the stem binder bolt enough to hold that handlebar in place, and then I had gone out and subjected it to an impact going down the curb. I made a mistake. But fortunately, I discovered the mistake during a test ride. If this had been a customer's bike, I would rather be the person who discovers that mistake than have my customer discover the mistake. By the way, contributing factors to the mistake. This is a cargo bike. It probably weighs 100 and 105 pounds, something like that. It's heavy. And I'm heavy. We put this bike and me together, and when we come down off that curb, we got a lot of impact. So I want you all to keep this sort of thing in mind. Watch out for these mistakes that you can make either through being absent-minded or simply underestimating how much weight and how much speed is involved. Now, the things though that everybody always gets all excited about talking about on electric bikes are fire and electrical shock. But first, we're going to talk about something much simpler. When you go for a test ride, and I strongly recommend that you test ride every single bike you touch, your attitude had ought to be, if I touch this bike in my professional capacity, it is safe to ride. And I know it's safe to ride because I took it for a test ride. I would really encourage you all to think that way and be that guy. Now, if you're going to take the bike for a test ride, there's a good chance that you're going to have an uncomfortable experience. Wear a helmet and wear gloves. I started riding bicycles back in the days when a helmet was regarded as a silly accessory, and I fell off my bicycle pretty regularly as a road racer and as a criterium racer. And what I know is that when you fall off your bicycle, it hurts a lot. And the first thing you do as you start to fall is you put your hand out to stop yourself, which means it tears up your hand. So if you're wearing gloves, the amount of damage to your hand is far less. And if you're wearing a helmet, when your helmet hits the road, it doesn't even hurt. I've done personal experience. Wearing a good helmet, when your head hits the pavement, it doesn't even hurt. So wear a helmet, wear gloves, be careful, think about it, look the bike over, check it out carefully. Now, the next safety hazard that we have really is lifting the bicycle into the shop stand. Most of us come from a background of lifting 25-pound, 30-pound bicycles or lighter into shop stands. We can do that with one arm. We could hold it up there while we manipulate the clamp. And now we've got a 65-pound bicycle. Get somebody to help you. Let's not have an injury caused from lifting. Don't hurt your back. Don't strain your abdomen. Get somebody to help you lift that bike into the shop stand. Mishaps with tools are the same as they are for anything else. A wrench slipping is not a catastrophe, but it sure as hell hurts. And then that brings us to electrical shock and fire. Before I get into electrical shock and fire, I'm going to review a list that everybody here already knows. Wear safety glasses. If you don't wear normal glasses while you're at work, get a pair of safety glasses. And frankly, if you're wearing cutesy designer glasses at work, or you wear contacts, put some safety glasses on over them. We deal with sparks in some of the things we do. A spark is a piece of white hot metal flying through the air. It's a really tiny one, but if you get a piece of white hot metal in your eye, it's bad. Wear safety glasses. Don't be wearing any jewelry. Don't have dangling clothing that can get caught up in a wheel. And whenever it's at all possible, disconnect your battery before getting involved in electrical stuff so that you don't have any surprise moments discovering that there is in fact current there. Use the appropriate charger for the type of battery that you're charging. Comply with OSHA regulations for your workshop. Wear a helmet and gloves when testing bikes. And be aware or be alert to fire hazard, materials toxicity, and the ventilation of the space that you're working in. And now we'll talk about, well, we're a little bit out of order here. Hazardous materials. Electric bikes, the hazardous materials on electric bike. Now we're going to talk about electrical shock. Sorry, folks. We're going to talk about electrical shock. One of the misconceptions that we have in the electric bike world is that, well, they've got a lot of current in that bike, so therefore it must be very dangerous in terms of electrical shock. But the primary hazard is actually from the mains current. Most bicycles, most electric bikes, production electric bikes, are 48 volts or less. Now, why? There's a reason for that particular voltage limit, and the reason is that your skin will insulate you from electrical current up to something like 51 volts or something like that. So if you are, let's see here, fully charged, 50 volts. 50 volts or higher is dangerous. So if you touch a 48 volt circuit with your bare hand, it might sting a little bit, but it's not really going to hurt you. Your skin is insulating you. Now, we've got a lot of bikes out there that have higher voltage than that, such as DIY kits from, I call them the Bad Boy Club, Luna, HPC, other outfits that build 96 volt, more than 100 volt battery packages. They put them on, they're intended to go onto bicycles with motors that are well over the 750 watts max. They're 1.5 kilowatts, 2 kilowatts, 3 kilowatt bikes. They can go 65 miles an hour. And because they're using these higher voltages, they are a distinct danger to the person who's working on them. So what we want to know before we start working on a bike is what voltage are we dealing with? If we're dealing with a 24 volt, 36 volt, 48 volt circuit, well, we don't want to damage anything. And it's better to not become part of the circuit, which might be uncomfortable, but it's not going to kill us. But if we're dealing with a home built bike that's got a 96 volt battery, DC 96 volts, maybe very high current, very high amperage, it's dangerous, very dangerous. And we want to know what we're dealing with before we get hurt by it. So let's talk about how to avoid completing a circuit. Let's talk about what electric shock or electrocution is. One of the things that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes is current and what current does when it encounters resistance. When current encounters resistance, it creates heat. Okay, so if we create a current path, a friend of mine many years ago was operating a ham radio station. He grabbed a hold of a microphone with his left hand that was grounded. He then stuck his screwdriver inside a piece of radio equipment, and that screwdriver conducted the mains current, 120 volts, to him into his hand. Okay, well, since the microphone he's holding with his other hand is grounded, that mains current went right through him from right hand to left hand, and made a path right through the middle of his body, right through his heart. And because the human body is not a perfect conductor, resistance was created, and when current encounters resistance, it creates heat. So there was basically a path being cooked through my friend's body from his right hand to his left hand. That's electrocution. That's electrical shock. That's damage caused by becoming part of an electrical circuit. And he got very badly hurt. He did survive, but he was very badly hurt. In the electric bike world, we deal with very high amperages. Even if we're dealing with low voltage, we're still dealing with high amperages. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But the basic strategy that I want everybody here to consider is how to avoid becoming part of an electrical circuit. And there's a very simple way a very simple precaution that you can do. Sometimes it's an annoying precaution, but it works, and it works really well. So here's what the precaution is. When you're working on an electric bike, until you know what you're dealing with, you get your voltmeter out, your multimeter out, and you measure the current. Measure the voltage. Find out what voltage are you dealing with. Don't accept the sticker on the battery. Don't accept the fact, well, that's a Trek, and the Trek, of course, is 48 volts. Now get your multimeter out and measure it. Now you know that it's 48 volts. You can relax a little bit. But here's another very simple step. Put your left hand, if you're right-handed, most of us are right-handed, not everybody, put your non-dominant hand in the back pocket of your pants and leave it there, so that everything you do to that bike, until you know what you're dealing with, until you know what the voltage is, until you know it's safe, everything that you deal with is with one hand. If you happen to touch a source of current with one hand, but there's no grounding, you're wearing boots, or you're standing on a clean concrete floor, or there's no place for the current to go. I wear flip-flops. I live in Florida. In Florida, you have two choices of footwear in my workshop, barefoot or flip-flops. And yes, if you drop something, if you drop a wrench, they are magnetically attracted to your toes. I don't know how they do that, but you drop it, you're wearing if you got flip-flops on, the wrench will hit your toes. But get back to insulation. Bare feet, possible conductor, possible electrocution. Flip-flops with a rubber sole 1/2 inch thick, not worried about it. Work boots with a 1/2 inch thick rubber sole, not worried about it. Left hand in my pocket, no, I'm not going to accidentally grab something that is grounded. Use my right hand to figure out what is the voltage of the circuit that I'm working on, and then decide what I'm going to do once I know what that voltage is. We call this the one-hand rule. Most electrical guys that work on air conditioning or home electricians are going to say, yeah, know that rule. Ham radio operators know that rule. And so now we'll go to hazardous materials. Any questions about electrical shock? Nobody's turned on a microphone. I'm a little bit worried about you guys. Come on. We're an hour into this, an hour and 15 minutes into this, and nobody's asked any questions. Hazmat, hazardous materials. We don't have a lot of hazardous material worries, except when it comes to recycling. Electric bikes, batteries, motors, and other parts do have heavy metals in the paint or in the battery metallurgy. If they are on fire, the vapor is not something you want to breathe. The smoke is not something you want to breathe. Lubrications, cleaners, solvents, they're flammable, and generally speaking, the fumes or smoke is not something you want to breathe. But most of our issues about hazardous materials are involved in recycling, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow. One thing you should do, if you've got something in your workshop and you don't know what it is, or you don't know how dangerous it might be, look up your safety data sheet, your material safety data sheet. There should be anytime you receive a material that does have any hazardous components in it, you should have also received a hazardous material or material safety data sheet with that. You should keep those in a place where the staff, the employees can find it. And if you're wondering if I just poured a solvent all over my hands by accident, how screwed am I? Go get the safety data sheet and read. And by the way, don't take it lightly. One time, many years ago, I was working for a guy that painted boats, and I got a solvent on my skin. And my wife informed me that I now had breath that smelled like that solvent. What had happened? The solvent had gone right through my skin, right into my bloodstream, and I was outgassing it through my lungs. It was probably bad for me. I blame any kind of issue today on, this all dates back to the day I got poisoned by that solvent. My wife doesn't accept that as an excuse, but I keep trying to use it. Okay, so get your safety data sheets, have them where people can find them. And that brings us to battery fires. And Martin, I'd like for you to be ready to roll the various videos that we used for this. And I'll talk a little bit about them, and we'll watch the videos in just a moment. So a lithium battery, okay, any battery can burn. Most advanced batteries today are manufactured to standards and with safety precautions that it makes them very safe. They really are very safe. Right now, every one of us has got a mobile phone and probably a laptop computer, and they've got batteries in all of those. And it never occurs to us that they're going to catch fire, because they don't. Can they? Yes, they can. And we're going to talk about what happens when they do. But the electric bicycle has a couple of differences from the laptop or the mobile phone. A mobile phone has one cell in it. The laptop has 4 or 5, maybe 6. So these are small batteries. They've got a computer right next to them that's managing them. Battery management system is very sophisticated and very capable. And we have a lot of experience, and the people that manufacture these things have got a lot of resources. So the idea that a laptop or a mobile phone will catch fire, it can happen, but it almost never does. But then there's the electric bicycle, where the electric bicycle battery is 10 times or 15 times the size of the laptop battery. And it comes from companies and an industry that's quite young by comparison to the laptop business. And many times the people that are putting those batteries together don't have the resources that IBM or Apple or Hewlett Packard has. And then finally, if there's any kind of a problem with an e-bike battery, they're going to bring it to you. So not only is there more of a chance of an e-bike battery being a problem, it's a small chance, but there's a chance. But all of the ones in your community that have a problem are going to be brought to you. So somebody brings you a battery and says, it just doesn't work. And you say, well, you know what happened? I have no idea what happened. Well, they're not telling you the truth. The battery, they may know very well that they dropped that battery and that crunching noises that came afterwards. They may know very well that the battery spent the night on the bottom of the swimming pool, but they don't tell you. They just bring you the battery and say, I don't know, it doesn't work. Is it covered by warranty? So we're the people that are going to get damaged batteries, defective batteries, and we're not necessarily going to be told the truth about what happened to them. That means that we run a very high risk of experiencing a battery fire. I know of at least 5 bicycle shops that have burned down because of electric bicycle battery fires. I know of a couple of residences that have burned down because of electric bicycle battery fires. It can happen. And an electric bicycle battery fire is wicked dangerous. So it can be any kind of battery, but lithium is particularly notable as a fire hazard, and most of our electric bikes today use lithium batteries. So what can we do to prevent this? We treat all batteries with caution. We instruct our consumers and our coworkers on how to correctly charge a battery. And we have a system in the store that means that we always use the correct charger. One of the ways to make a mistake and create a fire is well, I'll give you an example from real life. A few years ago at an outfit in Southern California, the warehouseman who was told, charge those bikes. He's got these new bikes. We've opened the box. I want to make sure all the batteries are charged. So he's told, charge those bikes. So he has several bikes on charge, and the chargers that he's using are all from a company called High Power in Taiwan, and they all look the same. But one of them is not a charger. One of them is a power supply, and it looks the same. It's got the same aluminum box. It does have a different label on it, but it's got the same aluminum box. And the charger, it's not a charger. But he hooks it up, and the next day, that battery catches fire. We need a system which means that kind of mistake doesn't happen, that the only thing that's ever hooked up to that bike, hooked up to that battery, is the correct charger. By the way, in his particular case, that warehouseman had made a mistake, but he also had prepared, and when that fire started, he had that battery out of the building and in the parking lot within seconds of it starting to smoke. And we're going to talk about what happens when a battery starts to catch fire. You will often, but not always, have a few seconds of warning where you have an opportunity to do something. One of the ways that you can avoid needing to do something is to have a charging rack that you can slide outdoors if you need to, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Put a timer on the mains current so that if you forget to turn it off, the timer turns it off for you. If he'd had a timer on that power supply, he wouldn't have had a fire. Have appropriate firefighting equipment on hand. Instruct coworkers on what to do in the event of a fire. And then in your workshop or your bicycle shop, practice. Because I often have had electric bikes, electric bicycle batteries in my workshop at home. Back when I had teenagers living at home, we practiced evacuating. You want to know how much crap you get from teenagers when you practice evacuating the house? But it's an extra bit of safety that you can do. Now, Martin, I'd like to show the FAA fire video, and for some reason it's not coming up, so I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to show us the FAA fire video, followed by the various videos that you've got that show what an electric bicycle fire looks like. Take it.